Capitol tonight. It was one step forward and two steps back for the Cuomo administration today as the state's second largest public employees union, PEF, rejected their new contract deal, forcing the governor to potentially lay off thousands of workers. This is on the same day as he announced a new plan to bring thousands of private sector jobs to upstate New York. So is this going to be a setback for Cuomo? We are going to put that question to our insiders, veterans of state politics who have seen their fair share of union contract negotiations over the years. Dave Catalfamo is the former communications director to Governor George Pataki. Now he is a senior partner at Capital Public Strategies. And Bruce Giori was a senior advisor to two Democratic governors. Now he is a consultant at Courting Place Consulting and an adjunct professor at the University at Albany. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, so the PEF contract deal was voted down by the rank and file, unusually high voter turnout for a contract. Where does this leave with the governor right now?
I think it falls into the category of bad timing for the governor. I mean, here he had a terrific announcement today about bringing jobs and some real important players and high-tech investment to the state. At the same time, the public employees at PEF decided that they wanted to turn down the contract, which I think that, candidly, most people throughout the state probably think might be wrong-headed on their part, and I think they're probably with the governor on that. But I think the dichotomy is kind of a tough thing for today, where he had some very good news. So.
I mean, clearly he would have liked the news cycle to focus on the terrific announcement on the job development, but his position is fundamentally strong, solid, because it's reasonable. He basically went to the legislature and he went to the state employees and said, we have to have budget savings. We're going to book them in the budget. We did, and then I'm not going the Kasich in Ohio or Walker in Wisconsin route and trying to take away your collective bargaining rights. I'm going to negotiate with you. He successfully concluded those negotiations with all the unions, including PEF, and the PEF workers chose not to ratify it. So they have chosen the unemployment notices or the pink slips they're about to get. The governor didn't choose that. And if he sticks to that, and let's look what happened in Connecticut. The same thing happened in Connecticut when Malloy negotiated it, and ultimately those unions all but crawled back, re-voted, and functionally ratified the package they turned down.
And the Connecticut governor is a Democrat, too, we should say. But, you know, the governor released a statement in response to this, and then following after that, the State Director of Operations, Howard Glazer, negotiated the contract, released a much more pointed statement, kind of blaming PEF's leadership for this. But at the same time, he didn't swing the axe. He didn't immediately say, all right, that's it, 3,500 people are getting laid off right now. Did he blink?
Well, I suspect he's cognizant of the rough juxtaposition today of the news. So on one hand, you're basically providing $400 million worth of public subsidies to a bunch of corporations to create some very important and necessary jobs for this region. At the same time, you're talking about laying off 3,000 plus state workers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the juxtaposition there isn't terrific, right? And I think that you can argue them both separately, but if I'm a PEF employee, I'm saying, well, you know, look, you have money to do this, but, you know, which are PEF jobs across the state of New York, but you do find resources to create this jobs announcement. So, again, I just think it's more the juxtaposition that is unfortunate in tough politics.
Yeah, Bruce, if you saw everything go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I think the real question is not whether the governor blinks. I'd be shocked if the governor blinked. I think the real question is whether PEF blinks and tries to come back, and I have no idea what they're going to do. But in this job market with 6 million Americans unemployed for over 6 months, with 14 million Americans unemployed, with 18.5% of Americans underemployed, with 32% of the country having experienced some job loss during this recession. For them, no, because because the unemployment was under the Republican watch, the job increases come under ours. But the point that I really want to make is that people will. I don't think the average New Yorker is going to understand workers who, in effect, voted to give themselves pink slips, and they're going to support the government.
And this was, though, a tough contract for PEF workers. I mean, it's a 3-year wage freeze, 9 furlough days. They would have to pay more into their own health insurance. I mean, it's not something that people would want to get.
But they would keep their jobs. And the whole thing we're trying to do in this country is to preserve jobs.
I agree with that. And it came off a contract that arguably was better than it probably should have been for the times that we were in. So, look, there's some yin and yang here. I mean, they had a very good contract before. I'm not saying they didn't deserve it, but the economic times necessarily didn't support it, in particular at the end. This contract actually probably evens things out with respect to, treatment of PEF.
Well, to Howard Glazer's point, then, did the PEF leadership, did Ken Brinyon, the PEF president, did he fail in telling his rank-and-file members what this contract would do?
Well, I don't think we should dump on him. And this could be the membership. This could be the membership with totally unrealistic expectations of what's available. So I'm not inclined to dump on the leadership when it came out of a vote. The leadership agreed to the contract that was turned down. So I'm not going to dump on the leadership. I think the rank and file may have some unrealistic expectations of what New York taxpayers and the government is willing to do. They're saying everybody's pulling in. School budgets were cut, health care budgets were cut, higher ed operating aid was cut, TAP was cut across the board, and those savings were booked. For them to walk away knowing that the alternative was pink slips is a tough thing for people to swallow, I think.
And look, I think there is some in the union movement who believe that they'd rather have layoffs than to move backward with respect to a contract. I mean, that has been, part and parcel of some of the negotiations in the past. And, is it easier to make how many, 90,000, 100,000 members, whatever the number is, unhappy, or easier to basically have 3,000 less members?
And we should say that CSEA approved a similar contract earlier this year. Does this show, we've been saying all along that CSEA and PEF are very different unions. Is this proof now that CSEA is a very different union in its approach and also, I think also quite frankly, in its membership, too?
Yes, and one, leadership and membership, and this is a joint leadership-membership question, will in retrospect, in 2 or 3 years' hindsight, look like they made the right call, and another will look like they made the wrong call. Each membership has made a different bet. Let's see where it is. But the governor is in a very strong position. I'd be shocked and see no reason for him to blink on this.
I don't either, but again, I was a little surprised by the tenor of the comments from the governor and from Glazer, in that it opened the door to, I'm not quite sure what, a revote or a renegotiation.
They did not say renegotiate, but they did suggest that they should reconsider their turning this vote down. And
for a governor who has been very clear and has always followed up on what he said, which is, I think, a very positive thing. That surprised me a little bit. Again, I thought maybe just the juxtaposition of the day required it, but I don't know. So is this a setback for the governor? Is this the end of the honeymoon, as it were?
No, his poll ratings are high. I think the public opinion will back him in this. I think he has the high ground politically and governmentally in this. So I don't see this as a setback for him. I think this was a fateful choice made by the rank and file of PEF.
Yeah. Okay, good for him, actually.
Okay,
it may be good for him.
I do want to get to one other thing, but before we move to that, let's talk about Bill Clinton being in Albany today, the happier side of the governor's day. Why Bill Clinton? Why did he come to talk about jobs?
I'm going to just give a shout out to my former boss, Governor Pataki, because President Clinton today said that New York had the longest period of economic expansion during his time as president. That happened to basically overlap with my old boss, Governor Pataki, who candidly laid all the groundwork for what was announced today. I got to give tremendous credit to the Cuomo administration, to the folks there for following through and making this investment, because I think it's tremendously important to the future of the state. So.
His former boss, Governor Pataki, deserves that shout-out. Bill Clinton brings a particular credibility to this issue. Jobs were growing at a tremendous clip in his administration. He, working with the Republican Congress, was able to set up surpluses, ending a half a century of deficit financing. He has tremendous credibility on the subject of economic development. So for him to come in and give that overarching message of you may have to make some sacrifices today to keep your eye on tomorrow, which is something you wrote about from his speech, and I think you correctly picked up the key message, his voice resonates because it has credibility based on achievement. President Clinton's polls, the most recent Gallup poll, shows Americans rate Barack Obama a much better president than George W. Bush, but not as good a president as Bill Clinton. And I don't think that should surprise when economics is the issue, and he had a stellar economic record.
Can we talk about one challenge from today, though? From everything that good came from it, and I'm a resident of the Capital Region and whatnot, I think when you look across the state, there's going to be other regions of the state who look at the investment and what happened here today and said, you know, why can't we get that kind of investment?
Right.
And that actually is going to be the challenge for the governor, because the Regional Economic Development Council, you know, have, I think, about $250 million to work with, as opposed to $400 million going to be put into one project in 5 years. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to be the challenge for the governor going forward, is making that balance and keeping all those other regional factions
satisfied. But there is a template here, because what this region did is came up with a business plan that worked based on certain strengths it had on the research, high-tech research, academic institutions, and they built corporate growth around that. And if other regions of the state can find what works in their particular regions and is the most has the greatest chance of success, they could maybe find that too. Maybe not as big as this, but
it has been fueled by public sector support, whether it be Global Foundries,
yes,
whether it be what's happened up with Elaine and the great work they've done up there. There's been a huge public sector involvement.
Okay, we're almost out of time. But wanted to get to this. Chris Christie, does he run for president? Is there an opening for him? There seems to be a lot of prodding to get him into the race. We keep hearing about it every couple weeks whenever a perceived front runner, this past weekend it was Rick Perry, falters.
I'll defer to David.
Do I think that there is room in the race still for another candidate and that Governor Christie would have an important voice? Yes, I do. I don't think that, candidly, he could handle the rigors of a campaign. I'll be real blunt about that. And I don't think that once he got in the campaign that he might endure sort of the heckling from the national media, because, you know, you've already seen in New Jersey, the fact is that, you know, his poll numbers are down because that routine, I'll call it that, and I don't mean to belittle it, runs out.
You get hazed.
You get hazed.
You get hazed when you start to run.
And, you know, so it sounds great and refreshing when you're not in your face with it every day, but when you see it every day, it starts to wear on you. And so,
and he has no experience in foreign policy, and he himself said, I'm not ready for this now. I need more seasoning. I don't know how he overcomes that own internal assessment as well as how he overcomes that statement. And if he did run for president and lose, then I think he will have made his re-election bid exponentially more difficult.
Candidates have made Sherman-esque statements before and gone back on them.
Yes, they have.
We'll just have to leave it there. Bruce and Dave, thanks for joining me.
Thanks.